Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Pamela Thomas. You can call me Pam. This morning, Eric McKinney and Barb Scobie will be presenting cataloging equipment, gadgets, gears, and Gallimaufry. So we'll be answering questions at the end of the presentation, but you can enter them into the chat box at any time. So take it away, Barb and Eric.
All righty. Thank you very much, Pam. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for Marches Online with the CMC. As Barb mentioned, we're going to take a look at cataloging equipment, gadgets, gears, and Gallimaufry. So thanks again for joining us, and let's get started. All right. First off, my name is Eric McKinney. I've been here at the CMC for just over 3 years now. I really enjoy cataloging the variety of items we get to see here, everything from blueprints to pickleball sets to all kinds of cool realia. I was inspired to library work by my wife, who is a high school librarian, although she was pulled from her library a long time ago to teach non-library related classes. But yeah, what can you do? In our spare time, we enjoy gardening, hanging out with friends and family, including some of our furry ones here. That's Griffin on the left. Tyrion in the middle there is insanely proud of his dual sickles. And that is a couple of the myriad of squirrels we get running around our backyard. We've been feeding them for several years and get some pretty cool looking ones out there. So that is a bit about me. I'll let Barb introduce herself.
Okay. Hello, I'm Barb Scobie, and I've been with IHLS since December of 2021. I started my library career as a part-time library assistant in a small Arizona town in 2010. In 2021, I decided that the wildfires were getting too close to my house for comfort. And so I packed up my kitties and I moved back to Illinois. And the picture on this slide, that's not a wildfire, it's a dust storm, also called a haboob. And I just think those are pretty cool. So took a picture.
All right, thank you, Barb. Our agenda today is we're going to look at some of the terminology we're going to use while we go through the presentation. We'll look at some of the fields of note that we also add and are used. We're going to share some examples of the things that we've cataloged, both originally and some enhancements. And there will be time at the end for any questions that you might have. You're also welcome to go ahead and pop those right in the chat, and we can get those ahead of time. But you will be allowed to unmute later and ask any questions that you have. So without further ado, all right, Barb.
All right. Today we will be discussing realia, more specifically objects that are considered to be equipment. Per OCLC bibliographic formats and standards, or going forward, BFAS, realia includes all naturally occurring objects and any other three-dimensional item made or modified by humans that does not fit into any of the other categories. Used for machines, stitchery, clothing, rubber stamps, templates, pattern stencils, alphabets for lettering, shapes for flowcharts, jewelry, pottery, musical instruments, fabrics, tools, utensils, seashells, rocks, holograms, and furniture. Now, keep in mind the phrase that does not fit into any of other categories, as not every 3D item is realia. And BFAS has several options that may describe the item in better detail, like art original, diorama, model, toy, etc. The term realia has recently been a topic of debate in the library world due to the increased instances where realia has been used to refer to artistic and historical artifacts and objects in the bibliographic records. And people are saying that practice is not correct. The term realia can also create confusion. Before I started cataloging, I thought of realia as items associated with sports that can be collected or traded, like hockey pucks or trading cards, helmets. While not everyone is as limited as I was in my definition of realia, I would guess that there are patrons out there who don't associate the term realia with library items. Another issue is that equipment like Eric and I are discussing today are better described as equipment, not realia. This brings me to the use of the GMD, or General Material Designation. Many libraries, including share libraries, add this field to their local bibliographic records to further describe items. This subfield H goes in the 245 field after subfield A, and the information is placed in brackets. But also, if you have a subfield B, the GMD goes between subfields A and B. Otherwise, you'll get yelled at by the computer. Remember, this edition of the GMD should only be made to local records, not records in OCLC. Okay, and my understanding of how to indicate that an object is mediated is not quite clear, but so let me know if there's some concept I'm overlooking. But for unmediated objects, you would put a 337 in the record, just as I did in the example on this slide. Is it possible that the way to indicate that an item is mediated is just by not entering a 337 for that? And now that I think about it, I can't recall seeing any DVDs that have a 337 mediated field, so I may be onto something. So the things that I am going to go over are, let's see, some of my examples, like the rhythm instrument set, that's unmediated because you don't need a machine to use it. I have a tablet touch screen computer, and that's unmediated. A game console. Now, this one is mediated because you need to attach it to a screen in order to play the games. But there are game consoles such as Nintendo Switch that are unmediated and can be played on their own. Okay, Eric.
All right, thank you, Barb. The fields of note we would like to look at, I'm sorry, I thought I removed those, are to the 007, the physical description fixed field, and the 300, which is, of course, is the physical description, the 33X's, which Barb has already kind of given us a little bit of a preview of, and then the 34X's, which are generally going to be quite a bit of in records like these. So let's take a look at some examples. All right, Barb, take it away. I love the sausage gun machine. Barb, can you hear me?
All right, here I go again. So none of my records have a 007 field because in this case, it would add very little value because it would just be unspecified or unknown or something like that. So there's really no point in doing that. Okay. So I'm going to be concentrating on the 3XX fields, and Eric is going to go into depth with fixed fields in his examples. So for the sausage filling machine, I searched in vain for records for gears, and then I widened the search for anything with a gear. I did not find any records, but I stumbled upon some records for objects that are in museums Victoria collection. It's really cool. So I found this machine in their collections, and one of the components of the machine is a gear. I hope that's close enough. Since I didn't find a bib record for this, I created a fake record for it. And for the purposes of this presentation, I'm treating this as an actual machine that works and not a model. That's because I wanted to add the 6XX fields that matched up with what I wanted to present. Okay. So for this, the content type 336, there's only one content type. But there are two physical mediums for this. There's metal and wood. So there are two 340 fields. I used the 5XX fields to enter all the information about, where the item came from, what the title was, where I got the title, and I got that from the actual website. Let's see. And then,
Sorry, Barb, I was trying to switch it to a excuse me.
well, I've got my notes up here, so maybe I'll
Okay.
just try to chug
You go
along.
ahead, I'll get it back. I was trying to get it to a better view for
Let's
everybody.
see. In
I
the
failed miserably.
650s, I have a subfield B for specimens, and that's the kind of genre of material. And then I also have some subfield X's for equipment and supplies. Okay, well, hopefully Eric will get the presentation up. I'm
Just
also going to discuss the rhythm instrument set that I got from the MVLD Collinsville Library. I'm glad they didn't send the actual items because I think I would have had too much fun playing with them in the office. Both the 245 and 246 were provided by the library. And in the 264, I have between 1990 and 2000. And that's because they weren't bought at the same time or as a set. And Lakeshore Learning manufactured these on different dates and all sorts of things. And this is a single unit because it does in the 334, it's a single unit because you can't just check out one instrument at a time. You have to check out the whole set.
that's still not giving me what I want.
Next slide.
You should see the rhythm instrument set, Barb.
Yes, and now I'm ready for the next
Oh,
slide.
okay, and you're ready for that. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Maybe I shouldn't have let Eric be in control. All right, thank you. There you go.
This record required a 340 for every single item. So there was a lot of copy paste, type, and all of that. But these all list the material, like the rhythm sticks are wood. So I think everything's either wood, metal, or plastic. And I also, these items are not in a container. I'm not really sure how Collinsville has them shelved, but I don't believe they're in a container. All right, so once again, I put the 588 because the titles were provided by the library. And the 650s, I have X equipment and supplies. And I suppose I could also add a subfield B with specimens in the 650 field that just says musical instruments. And okay. All right, next slide. For the Gallimaufry PD1161 pen display, it's a drawing tablet also from Collinsville. They did send the actual item to me, but I didn't want to accidentally break it, so I didn't play with it. Okay. Next. The 300 field lists all the items, the accessories, and everything in the box. And this is unmediated because you can use it on its own. You can attach it to a computer, but you don't need to. And in the 337 field, this is considered to be a computer. All right. So the Legends Arcade game console. This one can't be used on its own. You need something to see the games that you're playing. So this is a, kind of a different one like that. I think the Nintendo Switch is one of those where you can play it on its own. I don't know. I'm not a gamer like that. Okay. This is also considered to be a computer, even though it needs to be attached to something to work. And I was thinking that I probably should have added a 505 and put all 50 games on there that are on the console, but I did not. All right, take it away, Eric.
All right, thank you, Barb. I appreciate that, and with everybody for hanging with me. Hopefully this portion I'll be able to do much smoother than the first portion of it. As Barb mentioned, we do quite a bit of realia here. Of course, not all of it quite qualifies. Not all of it needs original cataloging. Many times we can find a record in OCLC and it just needs enhanced a bit. And so that's what I'm going to look at with my three examples here. I could find them all in OCLC. And as you can see here from my Kodak mobile film scanner, the original record is there on the left, and there is our cool little contraption there on the right. So now let's kind of take a look at what we did to update that. Starting with our fixed field elements. A lot of these aren't going to be too terribly different from each other. Sometimes maybe just the date. The type is going to be R for realia. B level will be M. That is considered a monograph. Description of I for ISBD punctuation being used. Type of material, TMAT, is also R for realia. It's not a GPub. Tech is N. I went with audience of G on this one. I thought maybe general, I guess it could maybe be considered adult and use an E there, but I thought general was maybe more appropriate. I could see some kids getting into this kind of thing. It's not a video or a video recording, so there's no time to record. So we use N, which took me a while to get used to. Why not just blank? But not my decision. I used the DTST date of 2018, both publication and a copyright date I added. The language is in English, which is the language of the instruction material and the information on the box. And Kodak is located in New Jersey. So that is the code there for New Jersey. All right, let's look now at what we did to update the field. Now, I know you're looking at that very first record and thinking, Eric, Barb just told us you don't need a 007. Sorry, that's how I always think of it. And Barb is right, but I decided there's actually nothing wrong with putting one in there. So for my examples, I went ahead and threw one in just so we could see, how kind of useless that information is really. So there's a 007 with subfield A of Z and a subfield B of U, which is just unspecified and other, which we will see down later in our record. There was a UPC number on the box, so I put that in a 024 with a first indicator of 1 to indicate that it is a UPC number. I was able to find a another publisher number. This number was on the box and also on the instruction material, so I recorded that using a first indicator of 5 for other publisher number and a second indicator of 1. It's very important to always use 1 here. What that does is make the information in subfield A an access point. So if that information is put into the OPAC, we can retrieve our cool Kodak mobile film scanner that way. There's a 041, and that's because the instructions are in English, French, and Spanish. And we'll see later in the record, I kind of consider the 041 a companion field with the 546, and we'll look at that as we get to the second half of our record. The 245 was already in there, so I just kind of left that. I added the 246 of just basic mobile film scanner. So if anyone was searching for that, this would come up. It was published in Edison, New Jersey, which is still the coolest state name, in my opinion, by CNA Marketing Incorporated, and it was in 2018. Notice I have, since I used a T up in dates, I have 2018 in brackets in the first 264, and then 2018 with a copyright symbol and a 264 with a second indicator of 4, which is specifically for copyright number. All right, the 300 field. I have one Kodak mobile film scanner, and then I took the measurements of the box, and I added a subfield E to account for the user's manual and the 2 mobile film scanner extensions. I suppose I could have treated it more like a kit and put everything, maybe 1 kit and then in parentheses around that, but I went with the subfield E in this case. As Barb mentioned, I have a single unit because it does circulate as all just 1 unit. There's our 336, 337. Barb told us about those, so I'm going to look at the 337 of other and unspecified. Seeing these in the record really tells you nothing about what does that mean? What is other and what is unspecified? So yeah, when Barb says they're kind of pointless, I can kind of agree with that because it gives the patron no further information about what is exactly this is comprised of. So, oops, sorry, I went too far. The 338 saying these are unspecified. Again, that's not very helpful. Our 340s, subfield 3 is good because you can put whatever subfield A applies to in the subfield 3. So our scanner is made of both plastic and metal. Note that I have two 340s in there. You might sometimes see those crammed into one 340, but please don't do that. It's hard to read. They should get their own 340s. So what is it? I also have the measurement of the box in there, and note that the user's manuals are both of paper. I did add a 380 form genre of work. I'm not so sure photography. Maybe that's something we can discuss when I'm finished. Maybe photography is not the best choice. Maybe it should be more equipment or reality related. I don't know. Put your thoughts on that in the chat, or we can discuss that when I'm finished. So let's look at the second part of our record here. All right. The 500, our friend the general note, where all the information we can't fit elsewhere goes to play. Smartphone not included, I think, is a particularly important piece of information for patrons to know. Don't want to get that thing home and be like, I don't have a smartphone, or mine's not working right now. I did reiterate the model number and another 500, as well as the compatible film types that the scanner is capable of handling. Excuse me one moment. All right, a 505. I've used the enhanced here to note when there's one mobile film scanner, what it measures, and then that there is a user's manual and mobile film scanner extensions. I didn't include the measurements on those. I'm not sure how important that bit of information is. So, but hey, throw your opinions in the chat and we can talk about that. There's a 520, scan and save film negatives and slides directly to a smartphone with this easy to use collapsible film scanner. And there's my 546. Remember I mentioned in the 041 that this is the companion field, and this is where I put user's manual has instructions in English, French, and Spanish. And there's my 588. Barb talked about that one earlier because I took the title of the cover from the user's manual. I've put that in a 588 with the first indicator of 0. You can see the subject headings. I won't go over those too terribly much. I did add a 655 or form genre term, second indicator of 7 of negatives with photographs in parentheses. And I did add Eastman Kodak Company as our manufacturer in a 710. Of course, the first indicator of 2 just tells the OPAC to expect a name in direct order and not in a like last name, first name situation. All right, our next item up for discussion is the Gecko Kalimba Professional 17 Key Kalimba, which is kind of redundant, but that is what it said. And this is not one of those unprofessional Kalimbas. This one always comes ready to play. What I learned about this one is I had no idea, one, what a Kalimba was when it first came across my desk. Two, that it was a lamello phone, which I also had no idea what that was when this came across my desk. So I got to learn a lot that day. I also learned I'm not a very good kalimba player, but that's to be expected. On the left there, you can see their website. So this is where I went to get more information about our kalimba. It's a 17 key kalimba or lamella phone. So let's take a look at the records for this one. All right, on the right there is our record. Starting with the fixed field elements, as you can see, there's not a whole lot that's different here. See the dates, of course. The country is different here as this was manufactured in China, so CC is the appropriate code there. Let's see, 024, there's a number for a UPC. 02851, that has a number of K17K, which was on the box, and that was Gecko is the manufacturer or the publisher. We've got our classification numbers in place. 245 Gecko Kalimba, Professional 17 Kalimba, and then I tried to tuck in as many 246s as I possibly could to cover all that in the title. I might even have missed a couple, so Who knows? 264, I did figure out that the gecko was manufactured in, I'm sorry if I'm going to slaughter this, Huizhou, China, and in 2018, as we mentioned earlier. Let's look at the rest of the record. Oh, too far. All right, here are our 3XXs. As we've mentioned before, the 3XXs you're going to probably have quite a bit of these in a lot of Realia type records. I kind of consider them the heart of the record when it comes to physical description. Our 300, in this case, is one musical instrument. It is made of wood, metal, textile, and the paper accounts for the instruction manuals. I've noted both the dimensions of the kalimba itself along with the case that comes with it. And again, this is a single unit as it does circulate with everything. There are our 336, 337, and 338s. And there are our 340s with our subfield 3 in place, letting us know which is wood, the instrument is wood, the tuning mallet is metal. Of course, the cleaning cloth is textile, and the instructional manual is paper. I did add 340 subfield Bs for both the kalimba and the case, putting their respective dimensions in those. And with this 380, I went with musical instruments, which I think is maybe closer than the photography one. So yeah, we can discuss that one as well if you'd like. Let's finish up this record. Sorry, the print's a little sillier on this one. It does say that it is part of the solid mahogany series. So that is open up for a 490 with a subfield of 1. We always use the subfield of 1 because the 490 in and of itself is not an access point, which I always found that weird. So we do add a companion 8XX. In this case, I've added an 830. You can see that at the bottom of the screen there. And the 8XXs are access points. So if solid mahogany series is entered into a search, that will pull that back. And note that the 8XX, it ends with a period, whereas the 490 does not. And I'm going to jump back just real quick. Oop, that's forward. Now you know what's coming next. And you can see that, nope. I don't have a period behind the CM. Should that still have a period behind it? Something else to discuss. All right, so to finish this up, I took the title from the containers. There's my 588, just a short summary there to let people know what it does. I thought plucking the tines with fingers was important because when I first saw the mallet, I assumed you used the mallet to play the instrument, but that turned out not to be the case at all. That's just for tuning it. Let's see, we have some cool 650 subfields, and the 710 Gecko Musical Instruments Company was both the manufacturer and the issuing body, so I added relator terms in subfield E for those. And I wrapped that up. I did leave the 856 in there. It was already there. I had no idea what a kalimba was, so I thought, yeah, that could probably be helpful for other people who didn't, so they could go look at it and see exactly what it is. All right. Well, since I gave away my last item, here we are with a nice G-Skyer, I think that's the right pronunciation, telescope. This is a nifty telescope. It's made for both beginners and super easy to use and super easy to set up. And I can definitely verify that. I had to set it up to get some measurements. I didn't get to use it because, yeah, that was probably might be going a little bit too far. And plus, I could not find an access to the CMC roof at night to go up and look. So, all right, here we are. Again, the fixed field elements, RMI. Sorry, I do mine in columns. If you do yours across, I apologize. Our TMAT is still R. Source is always going to be D. Again, not a GPub. Tech is N. Audience is G. But again, I think this is good for a general type audience. It does mention specifically that it's easy enough for kids to use, which is pretty cool as an astronomy fan myself. Again, I have my DTST as a copyright date and publication date. Language is in English, as that was the language of the instructional material and the box, and it was manufactured in China. So again, we have XX there. And here I have 2007s, ZBC and ZBU, again, just unspecified and other. What else to note about this? We've seen the 028, which is the other publisher number with the second indicator of 1, and our publisher in subfield B. We have appropriate classification numbers there. The 246 for this one, I just telescope seemed the most appropriate, so that's the only one I added for here. Actually, this is a country of XX. I'm sorry, that's because the place of publication was not specifically identified. I think it came from China, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So there you can see I ended the 264 with my 2016 in brackets and then added another with my copyright date. Let's take a look at more. And here's my 300. Now I've set up, this one was more of a kit, I thought, because it just comes with so much. So I kind of set this one up more as a kit. And that's also why I have the two 007s. Let's see, I noticed one telescope kit. I have all the contents there, the telescope, the tripod, all the different lenses that it came with, the phone adapter, the remote, and everything else you need to gaze upon the stars. Of course, it's plastic, metal, and textile are the primary materials. I was kind of surprised. I figured at least one of the lenses might be glass, but nope, everything is plastic. And then, of course, there may be a little bit larger box to fit the telescope in. Despite all the components, it is still a single unit because they all circulate together. There's nothing you need to check out separately for this. There's our 336, 337, and 338s again, as already discussed, unspecified, unspecified. Did I forget my other? Looks like I did. Eesh. Don't forget your other if you're using the 007. All right, and there are our bevy of 340s to describe everything that we have in our kit. A good rule of thumb, I think, for the 340s, if it's in subfield B, then you know you're going to need to add those items to a 340. And of course, adding the subfield 3, where you can differentiate between which item is which, is extremely helpful as well. So that is why I have those in there. Again, the 380, yeah, this one maybe could be more tech specific, but I felt astronomy was okay in this case. Again, that is something we can discuss afterwards. All right, finally, let's look here at my 5XXs. I got the 505. The dimensions noted for the telescope optical tube, I can put that in a subfield G because it's kind of miscellaneous type information. Zenith mirror, everything else is noted, the eyepieces, the Barlow lens, that always sounds so impressive. So you can see even the bag, I was able to note the color of the bag as well as the dimensions of that one, and the cleaning cloth was pink. That was kind of cool. And then in our 500, I took a quote directly from the manufacturer's website. Oop, I needed that period snuck through. I needed to delete the period after beginners. That does not belong there. Bad cataloger. But yeah, since I'm quoting, anytime you're quoting in a 5XX, you want to source that. So that's why I have manufacturer's website directly behind there. And the spacing and everything is correct. Except there should not be the period after beginners. You only want the period after manufacturer's website. I mean, I did that on purpose as a teaching moment. Yeah. All right, and to finish up here with our telescope, I've just got a 650 of telescopes. And then there's also a 650 with a subfield of 6, and that is, of course, telescopes in French. Again, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but I also just wanted to point out the CAQQLA, which is a French organization. Again, you can see that there on the screen. I'm not going to insult our fine friends over in France trying to pronounce that. My background is in Spanish. But anyway, I just want to note that that is something that is added by OCLC. It's not something you need to add. In fact, they instruct you to not add that if you happen to have that information or it happens to be printed in your book. So I just wanted to point that out in case you see it in the record and wonder what is CACLA, which is the way I'm going to pronounce it because it's fun to say that way. So I think that is going to bring us about to an end here. Yep, there are our resources used in today's presentation. There was a bit of AR artwork, but that is the only portion of AR that was used in the presentation, was just for some of the art. And if you have any questions, now is the time to unmute or to throw them in the chat, and we'd be happy to tackle those. And with us today to help tackle those is everybody here at the CMC. I believe Ryan is on vacation, so I hope he's having a great time.
Nope, he's here.
Oh, he is here. I thought, okay, yay. Fantastic. Well, let us have any questions.
Okay, so when you first mentioned about the 380, I just put that it has to be duplicated as a subject heading.
Ah, okay.
And then Mary also added, it's supposed to be the genre or form of an item. Photography is an element of the item, but it's not
Good
the
point,
genre
Mary.
or form. I think I would have used negatives and then with photographs in parentheses.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And then we had a question before that, so hang on, like go back up. So Brian asked for 264, is Realia really published? Would manufactured be better description? And I said yes. And then the follow-up to that was, if manufactured, more appropriate term would be 264, second indicator 3.
Yes.
And I said yes as well. And then also subfield A would need to be changed to place of manufacture not identified.
Yes, definitely. Good
And
point.
then Ruth asked, and this was in connection to the Calimbra, would you put in a copyright date if a user's manual had one, and then do a manufacture date for the object?
I think that would be fair game.
All right, I think I'm caught up with all the questions we've had so far. Everybody is allowed to unmute themselves if they would like to verbally ask a question. I'm going to put the link to our evaluation form. I hope everybody fills it out after the presentation is over. But this is also your last time to suggest any future, well, at least FY 2026 topics for only with the CMC webinars, because we'll be meeting later this month to figure out what we're going to be presenting for next fiscal year. So please fill out the evaluation form and give us some great suggestions, please. And also next month, Barb will be presenting archiving government studies, cataloging government documents, and that is going to be April 17th. So it's the third Thursday. Oh, Ryan says great presentation, thank you. But if we have questions, we still have plenty of time to answer those, either from today's presentation, or we can also take just general cataloging questions.
I just want to say thanks again for bearing with me through my technical difficulties. Eric has learned not to try to run that from Teams.
Oops, okay, Brian says, were these records enhanced in OCLC or locally? If in OCLC, would that cause problems if another library is circulating without the same contents in 505?
That is a good point.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think like if I did a 505 for that game console, I think that would be okay because they're preloaded into it, and I don't think you can change that. But yeah, a lot of times the only times I enhance it in OCLC is if it applies to any item that's out there. But if it's like the GMD, if it's local, then yes, put it in the local or record.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it would be, when I was learning RDA, I was trying to take what you see. So when I was going through the box and everything, I noted everything that was there. So in the OCLC record, yep, they could take that, and then if they didn't have all those parts, they could, of course, update that in their local record. But yeah, OCLC does prefer that if you can enhance it, or if there's a record there that you can use, the enhancement is preferred over starting a new record from scratch, and that's to help cut down on duplication.
Yes, please. And that would just be like the same if you had a book that was autographed by the author, you're not going to put that in the OCLC record because not every library is going to have an autographed copy, but you would want it noted in your local database. Probably.
Graham, if I autographed it, I might put that in the OCs.
Yes, but not every library is going to own an autographed copy.
Oh, true. All right, fine. I'll just do it in the local.
Unless if you're going to sign every book that's printed.
Oh boy. Never mind.
Any other questions? And like I mentioned at the beginning, we always record these, and hopefully the link to the recording will go out early next week. But I will send that through an email to everyone who's registered in L2. Okay, if there are any other questions, just please fill out the evaluation form. We really want your feedback, and we want good topics to cover for next fiscal year. Oh, thanks, everybody.